And because of this, it's actually kind of interestingly relevant to today, as we talked about. We were speaking a little bit about Frederick Douglass in a way. And, you saw this summer, Frederick Douglass statues have been torn down. And what I say about Augustus is if Martin Luther had a dream, Martin Luther King had a dream, right? We are living Frederick Douglass's nightmare in so many ways. And so we have to continue to speak out, right, in this new age of individual activism, as I say.
I love it. And I guess, Jon, one of the things that really stands out to me is you played in the NFL. You had a great career. I mean, 5 years in the NFL means that you made enough money in 5 years to not have to go work in a factory or go into construction. You chose a career that created impact and really creates hope and possibility. And first of all, I want to say thank you for that. But when I look at a gentleman who could have done anything, why was creating an impact important to you? How does that tie into your vision or your mission for leaving a legacy?
I just experienced a lot of things growing up. It was very interesting. I was blessed enough to be able to kind of live between two worlds in Bastrop, Louisiana, and I wouldn't call it a segregated town so much, but class separates people in the United States of America, and we know that the average household net worth of Black families is maybe about $7,000, and white families it's over $100,000. There's a huge discrepancy. But I was fortunate enough to go to private school growing up. And so I got to see and hear the narratives from, the two factions of the town oftentimes, which is really relevant to the narratives that we see today, right, going forward. And for me, I love football, I love sport. And so, but when I walked away from that, I wanted to spend my time in my second career, like really working on something that I felt was meaningful to me as well. You know what I mean? And the things that I actually care about. I mean, I think art reflects the time, and I don't want to make didactic stories or preachy stories or anything like that. I want to make stories that people can find themselves in, see themselves in, relate to, understand, like the necessity and have a sense of urgency about, just being good to the people around you, because it matters, it really does in the long run. And so, Augustus is a great stepping stone in so many ways. And then now I'm working on a feature-length film right now, and the script is basically done. We're soon to be out to producers, called St. Louis Man, on the story of Bruce Franks Jr., who was a battle rapper turned Ferguson protester, who wound up running for statewide office in Missouri right after Ferguson, and had to beat an incumbent, a corrupt incumbent, who cheated to beat him the first time. He sued, he won that, and then they ran again in a runoff in a very short period of time, and he won. And it had record voter turnout, and he passed legislation and worked across the aisle. It's a phenomenal story. He's a phenomenal guy. The short doc on him was nominated for an Oscar, and so I'm really excited about that story as well. And so, you're going to see a line of the stories that do kind of speak to, like I said, the time and the age that we are in. And, Augustus is a different genre than St. Louis Man, but similar messaging.
I think that's amazing. I got to tell you, I have a senior in high school named Gabriel who's considering the fact that he might like to be the next great Quentin Tarantino. I got to ask you, for these kids who want to consider going into film, what's your advice to them?
Study. If you go online, you look up Martin Scorsese's list of films you got to watch, Spike Lee's list of films you have to watch, and just soak in everything and start to really understand what it is that we're doing. Because even in cinema, not only just understanding screenplays, the language of the actor, but the visual language of cinema. Two people standing in front of a camera doesn't equal mastery. It doesn't mean that anyone can point and shoot, but you need to have a why on where you're placing the camera, how people are responding. So, and not only are we just studying films, I would say study the human condition. Really talk to people seek to understand how people think, how people operate, how people work, why people do what they do, and learn to do it without judgment. And then I would say read a lot of books, right? I'd say read a lot of books. And then I would say keep trying, right? Because you're going to fail. Get on your iPhone, shoot stuff, right? Because you're going to get better over time. It's very difficult to start out being great. And, even when I started, I thought that I had a very great eye for, cinematic looking stories, making things look great, but that doesn't mean that the story is right? So understanding that over time and with a certain level of awareness, I would just say, if you want to be the next Tarantino, you got to be what you're about. You have to live it, you got to breathe it, you got to believe in it. Otherwise, it's going to be a hard road, because this is a very, very, very difficult industry. So
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, Jon, and I'm just purely curious. What was more fulfilling, playing 5 years in the NFL or the work you're doing now?
More fulfilling. It's interesting to be. The thing that was hard about the NFL was that, when I started playing this game, I mentioned earlier that I love the synergy of a team. When you're in high school and you're in college, it's really easy to understand that, you're connected to something greater than yourself. But professional football is a business. Not to say that college football isn't in so many ways, but what that means is you're really understanding that not only is it a business, but that you yourself are a business when you go to the NFL. And, I think that was something I may have been a little bit more naive about when I got there, and not understanding that, like, how to approach it in certain ways. And so for me, I didn't like thinking about having a mercenary approach. I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself. I wanted to be part of something great. And, it was just difficult at the time because I was with teams with a lot of turnover between the Rams and the Raiders, And so, and then the concussions pulled me out before I really got to where I wanted to be with everything. But, I was blessed to definitely do 5 years. Loved it, But what I'm doing now, I have a little bit more, I would say, like, influence over how I pick my teams and how I work with people and what we choose to do, right? And what we choose to say. And we can really build that harmony. So for me, that harmony is actually very fulfilling. And then to know that we're doing specifically meaningful work and hopefully continuing to grow that at larger and larger and larger levels, for the rest of my life,
Love it. And speaking of doing really meaningful work, I want to shout out the great work that Special Olympics is doing in so many communities across America. And Jon, the Legacy After the Locker Room is very proud to partner with Special Olympics and promote their cause. We ask every athlete if they will make an autograph donation in partnership with Legacy After the Locker Room to Special Olympics. Are you willing to do that, Jon?
Yeah, of course.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome. Thank you so much. Any idea what you might sign?
I'd probably get a nice Raiders ball. Send that over. Those before, they're nice, pretty great.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Jon, I think it's really interesting. Jared Bunch, actor from Don King Coming to America, was on 2 weeks ago, and he said something very similar to you. He said, as a first-round draft choice playing for the Giants, it was made very clear to him that the NFL is a business. And if they could find somebody just as good as him and pay them less, the whole point was to make money. And it seems like you sort of were echoing, something very parallel to that. As far as the philanthropic movement, the creating social justice awareness, are you getting more satisfaction as a filmmaker than knowing that if somebody else could take your job at a lower price, they'd have it?
Look, the entertainment industry, it is just as much of a business as the NFL was. The only difference is that I can operate in pockets. And like I said, if my production is, my film, my thing, I can get to create and craft those environments, you know what I mean? And do my best not to subject myself to that sort of mentality that Jared was speaking of, it's here, best believe. But and you'll see it more in television than in features and film. But you know, at the end of the day, out here, especially, the margin for error is so small, and this is such a difficult craft to learn and to do and things of that nature. It's if you keep working, you will find your way here, and it will be difficult for people to replace you because you have a voice. You know, it's very specific. Yeah.
I think that's fabulous. We're just about out of time. I want to take a moment to shout out Stables Media and the Sports Philanthropy Network, thanking them for all the help they do. Also shouting out our sponsor, Vidget, the sports media social app. Jon, before we go, I want to give you just a moment to share your heart with the listeners, impart some wisdom, some of the things that you've gleaned over the years, and just ask you what it is that you'd like the listeners of Legacy After the Locker Room to know about you.
Oh, wow. I guess, you know, I'll just put it this way. It's been interesting to transition into, you know, as a former athlete, what we call the world of civilians, right? In a way. And when I started my journey from sport to filmmaking, I started from the bottom, you know. I didn't because I wasn't a superstar in it. You know, I made some money, I did okay, but I wasn't like, you know, coming out here and saying, okay, I can start financing a bunch of projects and things like that. And it was great to do that. It was great not to try to lean on the past to get over here because it's a cheat. So I would say, you know, when you're taking a journey, you need to give yourself into it, you know, and looking at the life lessons and always accepting your journey and applying those life lessons to your future, right? Oftentimes, what you'll find when athletes start over, they're doing something new is you want to get away from the brand of being an athlete only because you're afraid that people are going to judge you only as that, and they will, right? But that's your power, that's your life, you know. And so never deny that, never be insecure of that, right? It was only a part of who you were. It's not all of who you were, right? And all of who you are. And so here I am 10 years later and learning a completely different skill and doing these things of that nature. I'm still getting better. I'm going to continue to get better. And I oftentimes go back to the level of work that it took to be great in sport. And I say, oh, I was going to take that and then some at this. And I know that I can do that because I've done it before, right? And so I would simply say self-acceptance, right, is the greatest gift that you can give to yourself. And that's what I would impart to anyone, anywhere, at any time. And I would start there as far as any conversation you want to have. Ask yourself, am I accepting myself fully? Because self-acceptance equals self-love.
That's a great message. I want to thank you so much for sharing that because I think you just really nailed it there. Again, everything that our mission is about is branding hope and possibility. So thank you for that. Jon, I want to say thank you to you and Batman for coming on the show. Thank you for participating in a live stream so that all of the viewers can see what a honey of a dog you have. My name is Kayla Brett. I'm here with Jon Alston, filmmaker. Catch the short film Augustus. Look for it. Jon, if people want to follow you or reach out to you and find out how they can watch Augustus, what are your social media handles?
Easy on Instagram. It's at the.alston. And then, you know, Facebook, just look me up. I'm pretty open over there.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, again, Jon, thank you so much. My name is Kayla Bradham, and I'm reminding you to live your legacy.